Hey friends, welcome to episode 5 of our read along and book club. This week we are on chapter 6 of the Terraformers by Annalee Newitz. Because chapter 6 is kind of short, I'm going to go ahead and read the whole chapter and then we'll skip over chapter 7 and next time start with the first handful of pages from chapter 8. So as always, please leave your comments. Hoping as you guys go along that you are thinking about this and share your thoughts. All right, so no further ado, let's get started. Chapter 6, The Eel. Water management is where the land meets politics, from the Environmental Rescue Team Handbook. The building felt like a barn on the inside, mostly due to its size, but this lab was actually a monument to the power of water. A rotunda overhead was made from the same transparent alloy they'd seen in the tunnels, forming an inverted dome. Through it, they could see at the bottom of the Caldera Lake that filled the mountain overhead. Turquoise curtains of light fluttered through the water and across the igneous rock below their feet. Now there's a view, Destry trailed off, staring. Nil was equally transfixed. Incredible, he breathed. Whistle bumped up against them. That's a lot of weight, he texted. It stops heat, too. How does this glass stay whole? It was the same question they all had, especially after seeing the magma windows in the tunnel. Destry felt the edges of her curiosity fraying into fear. The Archaea had technologies that Verdance hadn't given to the people of Larange. Had the engineers of Spider City invented it themselves? Or learned to do it by making contact with people, those allies that Lucky mentioned, outside the Verdance networks? She tore her attention away from the tons of water bearing down on them and snapped back into the network analyst mode. Take in the scene, look for what's there, but most of all, look for the relationships between things. Find the systems. It was obvious she was in an environmental analysis and coordination center where the rangers were monitoring changes in the city's water infrastructure and the lands that fed it. Streaming 2D maps mounted on the wall revealed the city's sprawling 4-layer structure with air, water, and nutrient circulation cycles. There were roughly a dozen people at work in here, mostly homonyms, with a few bots and a plump naked mole rat. Destry watched the rangers' easy way of interacting with each other, mouth-talking or texting, listening and nodding. Look there, Whistle sent, pointing with his nose at the map to their right. Dominating the image was the megacontinent of Masqua, its C-shaped and wide-open mouth devouring the Bronze Islands and the Comfort Sea. At its back was the world-spanning Winston Ocean. Masqua's northern reaches were capped by ice, just like the South Pole. The smaller southern continent, Tooth, wrapped around the bottom part of Masqua's jaw and spread westward towards the submerged continent of Aotearoa. Larange was a black dot in Masqua's upper jaw, 2,000 clicks from the west coast and almost as far from the east. Bright blue highlighted Masqua's watersheds, fueled by meltwater and rain that created a vast network of rivers running roughly north to south. Freshwater lakes pooled in the north, and the massive continent spanning Eel River switchbacked through the vertebrae mountains, forking dozens of tributaries before emptying into the strait that separated southern Masqua from western Tooth. West of the vertebrae was Spider, marked with a red dot right above the equator. Water flows pulsed through the continent's many ecosystems, sustaining and draining. Beside her, Nil was going through a face journey that started with bemusement and ended in horror. He pointed at the eel's western delta. A mosaic of multicolored data overlays spread like a stain over the delta, which was about 100 clicks north of Spider. But that wasn't the disturbing part. On all the maps Destry had seen, the Eel River gushed south, continuing past the volcano before tumbling onward into the lower continent. But on this map, the Eel River abruptly turned 90 degrees in the delta and shot towards the west coast long before reaching Spider. Without the eel's nourishing waters, sensors revealed environments deeply out of balance. The southern Masqua watershed was at critically low levels. Forests were parched. One of the map overlays revealed a spike in regional herbivore deaths, which was starving the predators and ripping the food web to shreds. "Oh, shit," Destry whispered. "Can that be real?" he whispered back. "Verdance never showed us this data." "You see why we need to talk," Lucky frowned at the map. "Why are you diverting all the water from our aquifer? There's plenty to go around." Destry looked at Nil. then at the rest of their group. Do any of you know about this? Nil's partner, Rocket, hovered around to face them. They broadcast the sound of water being sucked down a drain from their sensor-encrusted head. The mountable drone hadn't spoken aloud since arriving in the city, and now they had everyone's full attention. I've been following the soft launch of Sasky on the real estate market, and I think I know what's going on. Rocket telescoped their head up to the hominin eye level, giving them the appearance of a small floating giraffe with 7 eyes, sizing up a delicious cluster of leaves on a high branch. Verdance is assuming that most of the big developers will plant cities along the coasts. It's the most valuable land, but it has a lot of desert. So it looks like our boss, Ronnie, sent workers down to dam the river using her usual brute force methods. Investors want a reliable irrigation source for the farms they'll need to feed millions of residents. The Eel River used to flow right past Spider. Now it's heading to the coast 100 clicks away, and we've lost our renewable water source. Lucky's lips thinned to a line. In a few seasons, we'll have to dig deeper wells. It's unsustainable. I don't see why you need that river. Long folded his arms. Annual rainfall will recharge the aquifer. Midnight lifted her head to its full height as she peered at the map, making Long appear to diminish in size. Look at these readings, friend, she sent. Without the eel, eventually the aquifer will dry out and the land will sink. She's right, Destry said, scratching her chin. The ERT should have managed this and kept the balance. But why do we care? Long sounded peevish. By the time that happens, this land will belong to some Verdance client. Then the water will be their problem. Destry was taken aback. Those were shameful words. A ranger who allowed ecosystems to become unsustainable lost their honor and the faith of their community. She glanced at Lucky, wondering whether they regretted asking the Homo sapiens for help. The Archaean wore an awkward expression that mirrored the other hominin faces. Nobody wanted to call Long out for his taboo comment. To do so would only make everyone's embarrassment more acute. Rocket raised their sensor bulb again and played a few seconds of sprightly dance music to break the silence. I think it's obvious that we need to coax that eel back to its old bed. It won't be easy. Gratefully, Lucky nodded. Let's take a closer look at that dam. They zoomed in on the river north of Spider and went deep into a discussion of seasonal flows with Nil and Rocket. She was glad to see that their ERT instincts for problem solving had dissipated the tension with Long. Some of the tension, anyway. Midnight lifted one hoof and thumped it back down, sending a text to everyone in the group. You're acting like this is a purely technical problem. We can help you now, but what happens in a millennium when the landowners arrive? How are you going to hide this place? Lucky shrugged. We're not going to hide forever. Destry raised her eyebrows at Whistle, who lowered his head slightly and sent privately, a nice thought, but it could end in death. Suddenly, Nil clapped his hands together, rubbing them with glee. You know, we could do this very elegantly without having to destroy that dam the workers built. How would that work? Lucky asked. About 8,000 years ago, the eel used to take an even older route south, and it went right past Spider. He pointed at an area called Fort Canyon, 273 clicks north of the delta and its offending dam. A long, weed-choked ravine zigzagged out of the canyon, providing evidence that the eel had once flowed in a more ancient riverbed slightly to the east of its current course. At some point, the river changed its mind about how to go south. It picked a new pathway out of Fort Canyon, and that's the one Verdance dammed up. The old pathway is still open, so if we make a dam at Fort Canyon, blocking the newer route, we might be able to move the eel back into a bed that it once really liked, and Spider could recharge its aquifer. Destry was getting excited. Yes, if the eel flowed into its old bed, it would completely bypass that vomit-flagged dam that Verdance is using to send it to the coast. And it would look natural? Rocket added. Wild rivers change course for all kinds of reasons. Nil beamed. He looked happier than Destry had seen him in many centuries. Let us stay and help you do this, friends. Midnight glanced at Long and said to the group, Shouldn't we talk to the ERT back at Larange? Her partner scowled and folded his arms, refusing to participate in the discussion. Destry ignored Long's sourness. It felt good to imagine protecting an environment that Verdance didn't control. I'm not saying that we're doing it for sure, but I like the idea. Maybe we could stay a while and discuss it. Our first intercampus ERT meeting on Sasky. Long glared. If our signals stay hidden down here, Verdance will be looking for us within days. They don't have the resources to track everybody all the time, Destry said with more confidence than she felt. Everybody knows that we're in the field. Ronnie won't check on us for weeks. Hellfire and Crisp settled familiarly on Whistle's antlers and cackled. We're in. We don't owe those Verdant's flesh eaters our loyalty. Let's fix this. And what will you do when Verdant's tries to move the river again? Long asked pointedly. Because they will. They want to water those coastal cities. I think we have a good engineering plan, which you and our allies can help with, Lucky paused, considering. And as for what to do about Verdant, well, that's a harder problem. That's politics. A group of Archaeans working quietly across the room from them stood up and began to pack up for the day. One loped easily over to Lucky, putting an arm around their shoulder. It's time for dinner. You want to join us, friends from L'Orange? We should eat before I show you to the visitors' dorm, Lucky agreed. Plus, speaking of allies, the dogs are back, so we should have some interesting news from down south. Whistle had only ever encountered Pleistocene replica dogs, and they were rather fond of eating baby moose. He looked alarmed. Who keeps dogs, he sent. Nobody keeps them. They tend to the intercontinental glass networks. Some of them are visiting from Tooth. And that ends chapter 6. I look forward to hearing your comments, and next time we will pick up with the first half of chapter 8. All right, thanks and good night.